I moved into apartment 3B, the first thing I noticed was how quiet the building was. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like something is holding its breath. The rent was cheap, too cheap for a downtown apartment, but I didn't care. I was 23, broke, and desperate to leave my parents' house. The landlord didn't ask many questions. He just handed me the keys and told me the previous tenant had moved out suddenly. The building was old, stained with decades of moisture and cigarette smoke. The carpet in the hallway was permanently darkened, and the ceiling lights flickered even when no one touched them. My apartment itself was small but clean. One bedroom, one bathroom, a narrow kitchen. Nothing felt wrong at first. The first night passed normally. The second night I slept badly. The third night is when everything changed. I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to the sound of my name. Daniel. The voice was soft, close, and unmistakably real. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. My bedroom was dark, except for the faint orange glow from the street lamp outside. I thought maybe I had dreamed it. Then I heard it again. Daniel. It sounded like it was coming from just outside my bedroom door. Hello? I whispered. No answer. I lay back down, telling myself old buildings make noises. But I didn't sleep again that night. The next evening, I stayed up late watching TV, trying to forget what happened. Around 1 a.m., the apartment went completely silent. No radiator, no traffic, nothing. That's when I heard it again. Daniel. This time, it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was inside my apartment. I slowly turned my head toward the dark kitchen. Who's there? I asked. Silence. I turned on all the lights and searched every room. Nothing. No one. The door was still locked. But when I returned to my bedroom, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were footprints in the carpet. They started at the front door and led straight to my bed. They were faint, like someone had walked in with damp feet. They were not mine. From that night on, the voice never stopped. Sometimes it whispered my name. Sometimes it whispered words I couldn't understand. And sometimes it cried. Soft, broken sobbing coming from the walls, the ceiling, the corners of the room. One night while brushing my teeth, I heard it behind me. Daniel. I looked into the mirror. For a split second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me, but when I turned around, the bathroom was empty. The air felt colder than it should have been. I went to the building manager, a woman named Mrs. Carver, and told her what was happening. When I mentioned apartment 3B, her face went pale. That unit was vacant for a long time, she said quietly. You're probably hearing things through the walls. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, I recorded audio while I slept. When I listened to it the next morning, I almost threw up. At 2:17 a.m., my voice whispered my own name. Daniel. But then another voice appeared, a woman's. Why won't you look at me? Then she started crying. Near the end of the recording, I heard slow footsteps. They stopped beside the phone, and the woman whispered, I'm right here. I searched the building online. 5 years ago, a blind woman named Emily Carter had lived in apartment 3B. She had called the police dozens of times, claiming someone was inside her apartment watching her. No one was ever found. One night, her screams stopped. She was discovered dead in her bedroom days later. That night, as I packed to leave, the whisper returned. Daniel. It was right behind me. I just want you to look at me. Something cold touched my cheek, and from inside my closet, I heard footsteps slowly moving closer. I ran. I never went back. But sometimes, when the room is silent, I still hear her whisper my name, waiting right behind me. I worked the night shift at a small motel just off the highway. It wasn't the kind of place families stayed. Mostly truck drivers, people passing through, and the occasional person who didn't want to be seen. My job was simple. Check guests in, answer the phone, and watch the security monitors behind the front desk. There were 6 cameras total, 1 for the parking lot, 1 for the lobby, 1 for each hallway. Every night around 2 a.m., I made coffee and flipped through the camera feeds just to stay awake. That was when I noticed the man. He was standing in the parking lot. He hadn't pulled in with a car. He was just there, standing in the corner of the screen beneath a flickering streetlight. He was tall, thin, and completely still. I assumed he was a guest smoking a cigarette, but he didn't move. 5 minutes passed, then 10. He never shifted his weight, never raised his hands, never even looked around. I zoomed in with the camera controls. That's when I saw his face. His eyes were wide open, too open, and he wasn't blinking. I picked up the desk phone and called out through the intercom speaker mounted outside. "Sir, if you're a guest, you need to come inside or leave the property." He didn't react. I watched him slowly turn his head toward the camera. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile. It was wide, too wide, like it hurt. The screen flickered. When the picture came back, he was gone. I walked outside to check the lot. There were no footprints, no cars nearby, nothing. The rest of the shift was quiet, but I couldn't stop thinking about that face. The next night, he came back. This time he was closer to the building. He stood right in front of the lobby doors, staring straight into the camera. I didn't go outside. Instead, I watched. He raised his hand and waved, slowly, like he knew I was watching him. Then he pressed his face against the glass. I could see every detail, the cracks in his lips, the dark veins beneath his pale skin, the eyes that never blinked. The camera feed froze. When it resumed, he was inside, standing in the hallway. I grabbed the phone and called the police. While I was talking to the dispatcher, I watched the hallway camera as the man slowly walked toward the lobby. Each step was slow and unnatural, like he was learning how to move. The dispatcher asked me if he was a guest. "I don't think he's a person," I said. The man stopped just outside the lobby doors. He tilted his head, then he opened his mouth. On the camera, I saw him say my name. I dropped the phone and ran into the back office, locking the door behind me. I could hear footsteps in the lobby. Slow, heavy. Then the doorknob began to turn. The security monitor in the office flickered on by itself. The man's face filled the screen. He was smiling wider than before. And then the power went out. The police found me an hour later. They said there was no sign of anyone else. But when they checked the security footage, the last recorded frame showed me standing behind the desk, and behind me, that man was smiling at the camera. The mirror was already there when I moved in. It hung on the back of my bedroom door, tall and narrow, with a thin wooden frame that had been scratched and chipped by years of use. I didn't remember buying it, and I was certain I hadn't brought it from my old apartment, but I assumed it belonged to the previous tenant. The landlord didn't care when I asked him about it. He told me if I didn't want it, I could throw it out. For some reason, I didn't. From the first night, I felt strange whenever I looked at it. Not scared, just uncomfortable. Like it was showing me something I didn't quite recognize. At first, everything it reflected was normal. My bed, my desk, the window, me. But after a few days, I started noticing small things that didn't match. The first time, I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, using the mirror on my door to check my hair. I ran my hand through it and smiled at myself. In the reflection, my smile came a second late. It was barely noticeable, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to make me freeze. I lifted my hand. My reflection lifted its hand too, but again, just slightly behind. I told myself it was my eyes playing tricks on me. The next night, I caught it again. I was sitting on my bed scrolling through my phone. I looked up and saw myself in the mirror, except in the reflection, I wasn't holding my phone. I was just sitting there, staring straight back at me. By the time I blinked, it was normal again. I started avoiding looking at the mirror, but the feeling that something was watching me never went away. One night, I woke up suddenly with the strong feeling that I wasn't alone. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the streetlight through the window. I slowly turned my head toward the mirror. In the reflection, I was already awake. I was sitting up in bed. I wasn't. My real body was still lying down. The reflection tilted its head. Then it smiled. I threw my blanket over my head and didn't look again until morning. The next day, I called my friend Marcus and asked him to come over. I didn't tell him why. I just didn't want to be alone. When he arrived, I felt better immediately. Having someone else in the apartment made it feel normal again. "Dude, why do you look so freaked out?" he asked. I told him about the mirror. He laughed. "You've been watching too many horror movies," he said. "It's just a mirror." "Look at it," I said. "Just really look." We stood in front of it together. At first, everything was fine. Then Marcus frowned. "Why aren't you moving?" he asked. "I am," I said. "No, you're not," he said slowly. "Your reflection, it's just staring at me." I felt a cold rush go through my body. "Don't mess with me," I said. "I'm not," Marcus whispered. "It's not copying you anymore." I forced myself to look. My reflection was standing perfectly still. Its eyes were fixed on Marcus. And then it spoke. "Get out." The voice didn't come from the room. It came from the mirror. Marcus ran. He didn't even say goodbye. He just ran out of my apartment and never came back. That night, I tried to cover the mirror with a blanket. In the reflection, I watched myself do it. But the reflection didn't stop when the blanket reached the glass. It kept moving, like it was pushing through. The next thing I saw was a hand pressing against the inside of the mirror, stretching the fabric outward. I pulled the blanket away and screamed. The reflection was standing closer now, too close. Its face was almost pressed against the glass. "I'm tired of being in here," it whispered. I didn't sleep. Over the next few days, the reflection began changing. Its eyes looked darker, its smile wider. It started moving when I didn't. Sometimes it would knock on the inside of the mirror. Tap, tap, tap. I searched online and found a forum post from someone who had lived in my apartment before. They described the mirror. They said it showed a second version of themselves. And then, one day, that version tried to come out. The last update was 6 years old. No one had heard from them since. One night, I woke up to the sound of glass cracking. The mirror was shaking. My reflection was pounding on it from the inside. "I need your place," it said. "You don't belong out there. I do." The glass began to splinter. I grabbed my keys and ran for the door. Behind me, I heard something fall. When I looked back, the mirror was empty, and my bedroom door was slowly opening. Now I live in a different city, different apartment, no mirrors in my bedroom. But sometimes, when I pass by a dark window, I see someone behind my reflection, smiling, waiting. The last train of the night leaves the station at 12:47 a.m. Everyone who lives in my town knows that. If you miss it, you're either paying for a very expensive cab or walking miles through empty streets in dark industrial neighborhoods to get home. That's why I was relieved when I made it onto the platform with only seconds to spare. I was coming back from a late shift at the warehouse. My phone was dead. The station was almost completely empty, except for one woman standing at the far end of the platform. She was tall, wearing a long dark coat that reached down to her ankles. Her hair hung forward, hiding most of her face. She stood completely still, facing the tracks. I thought she was just another exhausted commuter. The train arrived with a screech of metal, and we both got on. The inside was nearly empty. A few people were scattered across the seats, staring at their phones or looking half asleep. The woman sat directly across from me. I tried not to stare, but something about her made me uneasy. She never moved, not even when the train lurched forward. As the train left the station, the lights inside flickered. That's when I noticed something strange. Her reflection in the window behind her didn't match her. The woman was sitting still in her seat, but in the glass, her reflection was standing. It was facing me. I quickly looked back at her real body. She was still sitting there, motionless, head slightly tilted down. I looked back at the window. The reflection was closer now. Its face was pressed against the glass, and it was smiling. I stood up so fast my seat slammed shut. The woman finally lifted her head. Her eyes were completely black. "Don't leave," she said softly. The train lights went out. When they came back on, the other passengers were gone. All the seats were empty, except for hers, and she was now sitting right next to me. "You shouldn't have seen me," she whispered. The train began to slow down. Through the windows, I saw something that made my blood run cold. We weren't in the city anymore. The train was moving through a dark forest. There were no buildings, no lights, only trees stretching endlessly into the darkness. "This isn't my stop," I said. "It is now," she replied. The door slid open. The forest outside was silent. She stood up and stepped off the train. "Come with me," she said. "You'll never be alone again." I ran in the opposite direction, down the empty train car. The doors closed behind me. The train started moving again. I don't know how long I sat there, shaking. Eventually, the train stopped. When the doors opened, I was back in my town. The station was empty. When I got home, I checked the news. There was a story about a woman who had gone missing on the last train 5 years ago. They said she was never found. Sometimes, when I'm waiting on the platform late at night, I see her at the far end, standing, smiling, waiting for me to get on.